January 2018. Wow, it's the 24th. Hey, morning, everybody. So, it's been a few days. Busy times here in the sketch lab. The sketch cave, actually, is what I call it over here. Goddamn. I have a separate headset I use when I'm listening to things while I stream, and I gotta get hooks installed in the sketch cave because cables are crossing over. There we go. There. So, I don't know. I gotta have some coffee. Let's do it. It's not so much that it's early, it's that I ain't getting much sleep right now. So, I had I had this, the last podcast I think I did was fire drills. I think it was fire drills or fan question. The fire drills podcast. So, basically I was pulling 24-hour shift to get things out. And then after you have like a big push of projects that go out the door, you have this I got a 24-hour period where I'm available. After that, if nothing else happens, there's like this additional 24 hours of like recuperation. Hopefully, moments like that fall on closer to a weekend, so you got the weekend to sort of relax in a way. I try to take one day off when I have something like that. And then the next day I just sort of come in and out of the sketch cave and sort of reacquaint my head to what's next. Now that's what I like to call the, in quotation marks, responsible way. At work, back in the day, like in an art department, generally it's like a slow work day, but you still got to be there at the same time. And, it's funny. I'd see every now and then you get like some sales rep would try to push another crazy bunch of stuff the very next day, and artists no one would talk. Yeah, it's kind of like the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes. Like when Calvin has that angry face when he's just really pissed off at the world. His hands are in his pocket. So these are things that I've come up with to get myself back to work. And back to work, I had to go. I didn't get as much recoup time after the fire drill because I had this cover to do for Mount Olympus Comics. They have a book that they kickstarted called Valkyrie Saviors. I thought it was Savior, but it's Saviors. Saviors with an S. It's plural. And so I did that cover, and that came out pretty well. I'm pretty happy. I think that cover represents closer to what I was trying to attain with my art around 2004 or 5, before I got caught up in having to earn a living from art. I remember, what do I say about that? 2004, 2005, 2005, I started working full-time as an artist in t-shirts, day job. But my art, when I came home, I was still in college, so when I came home, I was usually doing schoolwork. But my art, aside from that, I'm laughing because I didn't sleep much in those days, was still like my own thing. I was trying to do independent comics and break in through Image or some of the independent publishers at the time, like Viper. And there was Viper, there was Arcana, and there was Ape, and the guys that do like the anime comics. Gold Digger, what are those guys? What those guys are? Obviously, kitchen sink press, which I didn't really fit the mold, but I had this look that was somewhere between anime and Disney, essentially, and for me, always seemed to look very European. When I was in Germany, I noticed that a lot of how I draw is very similar to like a lot of the more cartoonier European comics. But the second I got hired in 2007-ish, yeah, 2007, to work on Monstroids, which was a superhero book that Kevin Grievous, the creator of the Underworld movies, an actor and a screenwriter, he did I Frankenstein. They had this superhero book with monsters who got, mixed with machines. And for me, it was like a 80s cartoon, like Centurions, man and machine, power extreme. So I took that job. And the minute I did that, over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, my art started becoming more, I don't know. It slowly started becoming, you gotta appease the editors, right? You gotta work within a template. The first thing I did at Monstroids was definitely too aggressive and gritty. And then I cleaned up and went, one way. And then eventually, around 2010, I get into freelancing covers for Big Dog, which are very cheesecake-ish, if you know what that term means. Tongue-in-cheek a little bit, sexual, right? So somewhere between like a 90s Top Cow-ish kind of feel. I never went like full cheesecake, which would be like Joe Picard. He's a fantastic artist. He does that really well. And Adam Hughes, and I try to stay more in the Mike Turner, J. Scott Campbell territory with that work. But it was fun. But this cover, the guy who owns Mount Olympus Comics, Ron Zabala, I've been talking to him for a while. I think he's from San Diego. I think that's how we met. Just shooting the shit about it once at a con. Nice dude, quiet guy. And he'd been following my work and the struggles, right, of trying to sort of find my voice as an artist and getting publishers to go along. So the not that I needed more trouble right now, but the idea for this cover was that I would get to do artistically however I chose to draw it. So that's why I took the work. What it kind of turned out to be was it was that. I want to talk a bit about Subversion a little bit. You'll see where I'm tying this together. So Subversion is where you have an expectation, or an audience has an expectation. I'm talking subversion in a artistic medium, okay? So there's an expectation. You go along the expected route, and then you flip it in a way that you go, oh, I did not expect that. I was expecting you to do this, but you did that. And it can play out brilliantly, and it can blow up in your face. I think Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, is subversive in a way that takes a genre and goes against the expectations of what people thought a Marvel movie was and what that genre was, and nods to different movies and then playing against those expectations, and still being fun and not making the audience feel gypped. I think Deadpool did a fantastic job with that as well. I think The Last Jedi is a movie that's questionable. So Subversion is a storytelling technique. gonna come back to that as well. Where I'm going with that artistically is you have an expectation, publisher, their audience, and you give them that, but not really. Like you kind of move it in a different direction. So this book had a very mature sort of, I don't want to say realistic because it features giant kaiju women fighting, but it had a more realistic tone, or cheesecake. I don't know, it had a very serious sort of tone, and so I wanted to go more towards, this sort of cross between anime and Disney. I also found out that there's some thumbnail studies that the characters are, I know that Ron wanted the characters to show their scale in some form, that you could see city. You could see the city, you could see how big the girl is, the one that I was drawing. And I don't know their names. I don't remember. So I did an initial study that was a giant version of the chick walking through buildings, and they're on wreckage, and she's got a reaper. And it was very much in tone and very much in line with what Ron has as covers. And I did preface that wasn't my layout, but, word of the wise, folks. When you show a thumbnail to a client, regardless of what you type, what you show them is what they tend to expect. So sometimes I forget this. Ron thought I was going to do that layout. Instead, I was trying to find the tone that he was already hitting, and then I could do my spin on it, right? And the way I wanted to invert it was she was really big, but I wanted to draw her really small. And then I wanted to have the character's eyes and her face be something that I can focus on. I can look into her, her character, like see the person behind the drawing. So rather than seeing these giant boobs and giant butts and buildings being wrecked everywhere, like that being the focus, I would put that in there. But I wanted the giant version of her to be small versus big. And then I would draw a giant version of her, but the focus would be on her face and her eyes. So that was my thoughts on playing around with the format. I don't know if Ron was a fan of it. Yeah, I think he likes the art. I'm assuming, the man paid. But I can definitely tell you, I don't think, that was what he was expecting. The other thing I wanted to is when she was smaller, I wanted to limit her facial details. So as you pull away, in video games they have this level of detail. So level of detail, LOD, is that as things get further away, the models switch down to lower poly versions. They blend into lower poly versions to make it look like there's less detail. In reality, there's far less detail, literally, because as things get further away, you don't want to render complex geometry. Rather than drawing a complex face and just scaling it down, I wanted to draw her face a little more simpler. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of have like an anime-ish face the further away you get. And as you get closer, she's more, Disney, which was the thought. So, Subversion, right? Audience seemed to like it. I think Ron, I think he's happy with it. I don't know. I haven't talked to him. I'm assuming he hasn't sent me a angry email or anything. So, but I could tell he was definitely more excited for the original layout, and so I don't know how well the cover will play with his audience, because you sort of think that, they have an expectation from their publisher, and do something that doesn't fit with the book in a way that it doesn't look like the rest of the book. It doesn't look like the rest of the covers. I personally feel that's fine so long as the tone is right. Destruction and sexiness and beautifulness, right? But I don't know. It's a thing I weigh. You gotta be careful about subverting too much, though. I feel you gotta be very careful. Bring it back to that pin I put in the conversation 5 minutes ago. I've been rereading a book, Console Wars, in its audio novel form. I read the book years ago on my own. I've been listening to the audio novel. I got it on my Audible. I think it's very well narrated. Console Wars, the book, is about the big 16-bit battle between Sega and Nintendo in the 90s. And I'm telling you, this book needs to be a Netflix series. I mean, it really does. It also ties into the Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us. As if you know that story, when they get to the He-Man stuff, the guy that kind of like helped spearhead that ended up running Sega. But he lost his job at Mattel after the big He-Man crash of '87. And I don't want to spoil the documentary, but let's say this. He-Man made a lot of money, and then the very next year, didn't. The bubble burst. And so this guy ends up being handed the keys to Sega of America. And their way, because he's a marketing guy, and a damn good one, the marketing that Sega took, the direction that he pushed the company, was to subvert the expectations of Nintendo and what Nintendo represented, and to retailers, to the public, to kids, to the teens, the college kids, to subvert that expectation, eventually culminating in this campaign, this ad campaign, Welcome to the Next Level, which it's one of the, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. That Welcome to the Next Level campaign was just, I had a Genesis before that came out, but the Welcome to the Next Level campaign with Sonic 2 hit was just fucking, it was amazing. It was like seeing games grown up, and that, what I loved about games was being taken seriously. And the idea that Nintendo represented the past, and that they were too stalwart, and they don't change, and they're just going to do the same thing, and they're kind of frumpy. However, it's also a clash between American marketing and American ways of running businesses versus Japanese. Now, I'm not from Japan, so I can't speak to them personally. In my experience, especially being a fan of Nintendo, going away from them, coming back, and there's always this like contention between Nintendo doesn't give you what you want, they give you what they think you want, they tell you what you want, and I just want this, why aren't they giving me what I want? And I'll tell you, man, the book does a damn good job, in my opinion, if you read it, of understanding the difference between selling things and selling your company and selling your products for quarterly or even annual returns versus a long-term 100-year approach, which is what Nintendo represents. And Sega really used subversion price markdowns, right? Like bringing down the price of the Genesis. And Nintendo does that, we're going to do this. And if they do that, we're going to do this. And we're going to change the expectation. And this, we're going to have the attitude. And we're not going to... When you take the counterculture subversive route too far, what happens, in my life experience, is you put a little ticking timer on you. Because nobody can be counterculture forever. I think you have a tops of 3 to 5 years before that blows up in your face. Because once you do that, and if it's successful, and you become the norm, how do you become the counterculture to your own counterculture? What is the subversion to your subversion? Does it just flip back? If you're the 180, then the 180 to you just takes you back to where you were before. And this is how Nintendo has managed to survive. None of these companies are around anymore. The only other company to come out of this book And you see them kind of start from the beginning in a small third-player way as Sony, and what Sony ends up becoming to gaming is a culmination of what Sega was trying to do, and then, and Nintendo, like this blend of that. But I think they've had their ups and downs too. But I think Nintendo's still, they have the theme parks coming out. They're still kicking ass, man. I love my Switch. But that Subversion, you gotta be very careful with Subversion as an artist, because I don't think it plays long term. And I see, now that I'm pushing 40, I've seen this in business in this country. I've seen where this country's gone, with over marketing things and overhyping things, and we're gonna drop this here and there, and having a very short-term approach to business and to audiences and stuff. So it's also a reason why I don't just jump on every bandwagon there is. When someone says, Rob, you should do this, you should do that, I'm like, well, today, I don't know. All I know is subversive, not subversive. If you make a quality product and you don't fuck with your audience, you're genuine with them. You don't overhype something. You don't call fucking, like, if I did a cover that was shit, I'll tell you I'm not happy with it. Find a way to go, hey, let people know you're being honest with them. It's not my best work. This last cover, it's some of my best work for me. I believe so. For a lot of reasons. But if you do that, you can survive the long term. Anything else, and you're not going to make it. It's 22 minutes. Really quickly, Luis from Twitter had a question about how I get my lines so smooth in Photoshop. So, I'll just answer it now. So he wanted to know if I use any third-party plugins. Currently, I am using Lazy Nezumi Pro with Photoshop. I have it mostly set to smoothing and pressure gain, and I adjust the amount I keep it at 10. And what pressure gain does is it doubles the amount of pressure you're applying, so you don't have to press hard. But that's a recent thing, and I kind of started using it on the Game Informer cover to speed up the cleaner line thing. The way I got around it before that was I just used my arm, my shoulder, to draw lines. My lines these days aren't as clean as you think they are. I used to get super clean lines, like that Game Informer cover is super clean. If you look at this cover I just did, they look clean, but they're not. I'm doing a couple tricks with that. One, I have a brush that I'm using that I have set to 80% opacity, and I have my eraser also set to 80% opacity. And with a double pressure gain on, it gives me a softer feel to the lines, but when I erase, it leaves I'm not using multiple layers too much when I'm actually drawing elements. So when I erase, it leaves a little bit of the drawing underneath. And then I draw on top. And so what that's allowed me to do is, one, work at like closer to a 50% or 100% zoom versus 300. Sometimes 200 depending on how small they are, but never more than that. Like, I'm not zoomed in as much as I was before. But two, it leaves these bits of little drawing, like when you erase something and it doesn't erase all the way, it leaves that in the art. And then as you build up, it just makes it a little bit more complete, makes it feel it's got more energy. It's got some of the sketch in there, and it rounds out lines and keeps things looking smooth and soft. And I drew this cover in half the time it would have took me using these techniques. If you're using Photoshop, I highly recommend, if you want to ignore using your shoulder to get clean lines, just get Lazy Nezumi Pro versus, say, you switching to another program because you can control the amount of smoothing. But I mostly leave it to 10. Sometimes I turn it up to 25 if I need to get something. But these days I don't. What I do is I just sort of sketch like lightly with the double pressure gain, and it connects the lines together. So there you go. That's it. That's the answer. It is January 24th, 2018, and I got stuff to work on. I gotta get to work. See y'all tomorrow.